Welcome to the Crowds Line College Football Show, featuring Coach Lou Holtz and Mark May. Every week, you can predict the winner, the score, and compete against the crowd for prizes. Sign up on the Crowds Line app or by going to thecrowdsline.com.
Welcome to the Crowds Line College Football Show with Lou Holtz and Mark May. I'm your moderator, Kevin Trimble, and I'm going to tell you it's a pleasure to work with these two football legends. Mark May, two-time Super Bowl champion, College Football Hall of Famer. Coach Lou Holtz, national championship coach, led Notre Dame to the 1988 national championship. Gentlemen, we are in week 5. We've had 4 shows, and as we know, a college football season, let's talk about it. 12 games, and then you add 4, bowl season is 16 weeks. So we're through the first quarter. I think we're ahead, but we're going to keep on going. But as we look through going into the second quarter, in football speak, by this time, Mark May, the offensive lineman's figured out who's in front of him. He's kind of gotten in his head a little bit where he's going to go. Coach Holtz is doing a little chess match right now. He's already seen, are the trends going to pop up? Is there a new wrinkle in the scheme with his opponent across the field? And, for myself, all I know is I want us to score so I can run down on the kickoff team again. But with that said, let's talk about what just happened in this week 4. We've got upsets. We've got 7 of the top 25 teams in America were upset or lost this week, but 5 of those lost to unranked teams. We can go on for the rest of the show. You're going to hear as we pick some games later on. But most importantly, let's talk about an upset that happened down in Norfolk, Virginia. Number 13, Virginia Tech, went to Old Dominion in the 757 area code where a lot of their players came from. And they went down there and they got beat, It wasn't pretty. So, Mark, what do you think about that game down there in Norfolk, Virginia?
It was a great win for Old Dominion, obviously, putting 49 points on the board on the Virginia Tech defense led by Bud Foster. When we first saw this team early in the season play against Miami, how good they were against Florida State, how good they were getting to the quarterback, stopping to the run, putting pressure on the offense. In this game, for some reason, the wheels just came off in the fourth quarter. They gave up 24 fourth quarter points to Old Dominion and 49 total points to this team. That's one of the things that sticks out that everybody's talking about. It's the chatter of the college football universe in the Twitter world because people are trying to figure out how a team like Virginia Tech could lose to Old Dominion, Coach.
As I told you, Mark, earlier in the year, you can't tell what kind of team you have. It turns out that they were so impressive against Florida State, but so is everybody else. Florida State hadn't been very good this year, so maybe Virginia Tech's not as good as we thought. In addition to that, Virginia Tech lost their quarterback, Josh Jackson. Mm-hmm. That's a tremendous blow. In addition to that, they had to dismiss their leading pass rusher. 3.5 sacks already this year because they felt for the best interest of the team. And when you look at Virginia Tech right now, and I'm trying to say, okay, how would I feel if I was the head coach for Virginia Tech? First thing you tell them, the only friends you have when things don't go well are those you eat with, sleep with, bleed with, pray with, and cry with. That's your family and your friends. We got to band together. Remember, after Florida State, you had all kinds of friends. You don't have any now except those in this room. We have to band together. In addition to that, it wasn't a conference game. We can still win the conference. Yes, we lost a quarterback, but we're always going to have a couple crises. We got to step up. We got to band together. We will turn this into a plus. You must react that way.
Well, Mark, we've talked about upsets before, and as we say, there were 5 of the top 25 teams this week lost to unranked teams. And you mentioned Virginia Tech, Mississippi State lost to Kentucky, TCU lost to now ranked Texas, Boston College lost to Purdue, Oklahoma State lost to now ranked Texas Tech. But the big game that, top 25 lost, Oregon, Stanford. Stanford's got the ball, 52 seconds left. They've got the game won. And what I really want to know, Mark, we'll go more into the breakdown of this, but you've lost tough games before. What's the best coaching advice? What's the best player advice? And if I put you in that Oregon locker room before they go to Cal this weekend, what's your advice to them?
Well, if I'm the head coach of Oregon right now, I walk into that locker room and I tell the players, hey, it's on me. I made a mistake. We should have gone into the victory formation with 52 seconds to go on a first down instead of run the ball. The game would have been over. If you saw the Monday Night Football game, that's what the Pittsburgh Steelers did. If you see any game that's a big game, good coaching does that. And coach knows when you've got to go in the victory formation, you do it as soon as you can because you want to ice the game and put it away. And that's what a head coach should do. He should walk into that locker room and say, you know what, this is my mistake. I made a mistake, you guys. This one's on me.
It was his first year as a head football coach at Oregon. He's going to do an outstanding job. He has a very, very fine football team. They outgained Stanford 525, something like that, to 387. It was a real dominant by a very, very fine Oregon football team. However, the coach did fumble the football. Man, this was on me. I agree with you, Mark. But then again, I thought I had enough confidence in you would protect the football because you know how important it is. That football is so important. You realize, Mark, they even named the game after it. They call it football. That's how important it is. You protect that sucker. Whether we're falling on or you're carrying on it, I would take the blame this time. Next time, no.
Well, later this month, we're going to set something up, next month, on our website. And what we're going to do is we're going to have a coaching clinic podcast. And it's going to be an open line to one listen, but number two for folks like Coach Justin Fuente, Coach Mario Cristobal, and Coach Scott Frost has a line to call, has somebody to talk to, or have somebody, that he can listen to. And Coach, you look at Nebraska, 0-3. Okay, it was going to be a rough start, but a rough start in the Big House, and they called the mercy rule. I mean, that was bad. Coach, what's your advice to Scott Frost?
Well, first of all, Scott Frost came to UCF and did a tremendous job. He inherited a football team that went 0-12. By his second or third year, he's undefeated. He goes to Nebraska, which is his alma mater, thinking, hey, I know all the answers. I can get everything done. First thing you do when you go into school, you undersell everything. You're not a savior. You don't raise the expectations of people. You lower the expectations. We're here because we have some problems. We're not going to solve them overnight. There's no miracle thing. And then I think you have to look and say, it isn't what I want to do on an offense or defense. What can our players do on offense or defense? Yes, he lost his quarterback, his freshman quarterback, but he has to he gained 132 yards against Michigan. You can't do that. You have to give the players something they can do. But once again, you're in it for the long haul. Don't ever make a decision to solve an immediate problem that jeopardizes your long-range goals.
Well, we're going to talk about the other top 25 teams that lost. We'll talk about them later in our review picks. But I want to really start thinking about, what's going to happen for the next couple weeks, what's going to happen for the rest of the season. And maybe now the blowouts are over. We're into conference play. And one of the things with conference play, and Mark, maybe you can shed light on this. We saw Oklahoma State last week, and Oklahoma State, came out, they beat Boise State, and they were looking good. And all of a sudden, they lost to Texas Tech. And that wasn't really close. And now Texas Tech is ranked. What's your thoughts on that in the Big 12?
Well, whatever happens in the Big 12, you've got to play defense, and not many teams play defense in that conference. Everybody's an offensive-minded football team. And Texas Tech, they're going to throw the ball around. They're going to be one of the most explosive teams that you're going to play. Mike Gundy knows that. They just couldn't keep up with them scoring-wise. And it goes down to the wire in these games. And if you can't score in every corner, if you can't score in every possession in that conference, you're going to lose football games. And in that game, that's what happened. Texas Tech just kept pouring it on and pouring it on and pouring it on. And they're relentless once they get hot moving the football.
What's amazing is I said it over and over, and I'll say it every week. You never have the same team two weeks in a row. Different. I can't explain it why, but they don't play the same way. You look at TCU, you look at Oklahoma State, the list goes on and on. But what really impressed me, Mark, they beat Oklahoma State at Stillwater, and that's not real easy to do.
Well, there you have it. Talking about the week in review with the upsets. What's going to happen next, other than some coaching clinics with Coach Lou Holtz, and Mark May goes down there especially, talking to those big old linemen and say, hey, boys, get your head back in the game. But what I want to talk about are the games that we picked. And we picked the College Football Show contest, and we picked the Rapid 5 contest. And I want to go back through and look at our College Football Show contest. We had number 22, Texas A&M at number 1, Alabama. Number 7, Stanford at number 20, Oregon. Number 2, Georgia at Drew Lock in Missouri. And then we had Tulane at number 4, Ohio State, and number 8, Notre Dame, went down to Winston-Salem. So I want to go first, Texas A&M. Texas A&M at Alabama, and I think we'd all agree, okay, hey, it's kind of like when you're going around the room with a bunch of guys, you know how it's going and you're roughhousing, okay, well, who's going to take the big one? All right, Texas A&M, it's your turn to go, take your shot down in Tuscaloosa. And you know what? I think it was a pretty close game up front. But once again, now Nick Saban is 13-0 against his former assistants. Mark, talk to us about that game in Tuscaloosa.
Well, Kellen Mond had a tough game in that game. He got sacked a bunch of times and pressured a lot of times in that game and turned the ball over the quarterback for Texas A&M. But here's the thing. If you look at the quarterback for Alabama, Tua Tagovailoa, is amazing with the football. Not only throwing the football for almost 400 yards and 4 touchdowns, but he also ran it again. And, Coach, he hasn't played a full game. When you look at Alabama, show me their weakness on offense, on defense, on special teams, with their coaching staff, with the talent that they have. They have no weakness in college football this year. And Nick Saban has already come out and said, this is probably the most complete offense I've ever had as far as wide receivers, offensive linemen, running backs, quarterbacks. He's deep at every single position, and right now they just look like a juggernaut.
I agree with you. I think this is the best football team Nick Saban's ever had. And the quarterback, Tua, give him the Heisman now. Let's not wait and talk about who's going to win. He is unbelievable, Mark. 4 or 5 touchdowns, about 80% of his passes. You look at his passing efficiency this year, it's out of sight. Nobody's even close to him, although Haskins at Ohio State would be in second place. But it's just a great football team. I thought that A&M would play them a little bit better, but unfortunately, no.
Well, like we said, Nick Saban is now 13-0 against former assistants. Next up, the Crimson Tide have the Raging Cajuns of Louisiana, and Texas A&M has Arkansas. And I think Arkansas has worked on that punt coverage as we talked about. But our second game was Stanford at Oregon. And that game looked over as well in the third quarter, and then things happened. 52 seconds left, there's a fumble. And KJ Costello, 3 touchdowns. Justin Herbert, he's the real deal. We saw that, but threw 1 touchdown pass. Mark, what's your thoughts on that, and where's this going from here on out?
Well, from here on out, for Stanford, they've got Notre Dame coming up. And not only that, the way that they played in this football game, they're a very resilient football team. They're extremely well coached. They don't make a lot of mistakes, and they don't give up in a game. That's one thing that David Shaw can sell his football team about. No matter where we are in a football game, as long as you hang in there and keep throwing body blows, we've got a chance. And that's what happened against Oregon. Some fluky things happened in the game, but Stanford still came out and played. I think if you look at Bryce Love, he's back, not to being Bryce Love, but at least to a competitive position that helps their offense and KJ Costello. But at the end of the game, it was definitely some coaching calls and some decisions that was made by the coaching staff, and not just to blame the coaching staff of Mario Cristobal, but coach, you've got the ball with 52 seconds to go on first down. You take a knee and the game is over. Take a knee twice and it's over, and you're running around giving everybody high fives, and you're running to the locker room and it's over. You're handing out the game ball. They didn't do that. They decided to run it. I know the player fumbled it, but still in that situation, go down in the victory position and you get the W.
The most important thing about the ball possession, who gets to keep it after the game. And when you fumble it away, Stanford gets to keep the game ball. On the other hand, Mark, I was watching Florida State, and they're playing a football game. They haven't won. It's over. 12 seconds to go, they run it in for a touchdown to make it sort of lopsided. And I just thought, that's not really the way the things to do. You think about the team on the other side of the field, etc. But Oregon was a better football team by far. And not only that, the one thing that's very positive for Notre Dame, they have a receiver, I think, named Dylan Mitchell. 14 receptions, 239 yards against Stanford, 1 receiver. I can imagine Ian Book is just having a great time preparing for Stanford.
Well, as we know, next up, Stanford's going to South Bend, and Oregon is going to Berkeley to face the undefeated Bears. So that's a big Pac-12 North, because there's only 3 teams in the Pac-12 North that are undefeated: Stanford, Cal, and Colorado. And we're going to get to them here in a few weeks, but that's pretty exciting. We look at our third game. Georgia was going to Missouri and Drew Lock. And was this going to be Georgia's first test? Was this going to be Drew Lock's first real test? Well, I think they kind of kept him in check. It was 43-29, but Georgia still found ways to win when Kirby Smart it's being a little bit too much Nick Saban. He's like, I wasn't really happy about it. Too many things we did wrong. And that sounds good, but I think that was a pretty good Missouri team, and Georgia handled them. Mark, what's your thoughts?
I think the Missouri defense is really impressive in this game, particularly in the first half of this game. They should have had the lead in the first half of this game. The first 20 points scored by Georgia were by 2 field goals, a blocked punt recovered for a touchdown, and a scoop and score by the defense on a fumble. So they're up by 20 points at that point. And not only that, they did a terrific job on Drew Lock in this game, put a lot of pressure on him. He didn't throw for a touchdown pass, but Jake Fromm did in the second half. 3 touchdowns in the second half, the 1 interception. I thought that they scrapped in this game. They were hitting the mouth on the road, and they survived in this game. That's the bottom line for Kirby Kirby Smart, he can ridicule his football team a little bit because they made a lot of mistakes in this game, Coach, but they still came out with a victory.
It's a perfect game for Coach Kirby Smart. You did play well, you made a lot of mistakes, and you won on the road against maybe the second best team in your division. So now you can go back with a win, and that's important. Now you make all the corrections you have to make, and now you have the players' attention. You know, after the South Carolina game where they dominated South Carolina, I'm sure that Georgia fans already have them in the championship game against Alabama, etc., and everybody telling them how great you are, etc., and they start listening to the fans more than they do the coach because they like what the fans say. They don't like what the coach is saying to them. You know, Mark, you've been there. I've coached people like you. You just don't want to listen to them. So it's a great thing for Georgia. Yeah, that's it.
Next up, Georgia hosts Tennessee, which, you know, had a tough one down there at Florida, and Missouri is at South Carolina. Tulane at Ohio State. Okay, warm-up game for Penn State. Daddy's home, Urban Meyer. Things are exciting. Dwayne Haskins, 5 touchdown passes. Nick Bosa, he's not going to play, still hurt after that surgery from injury against TCU. And it was 49-6. What does that tell us? How things going to look as they go to Happy Valley next week? Mark.
Well, it tells us that Ohio State should start at least putting better teams on their schedule in the non-conference. Yes, they had TCU, but they also had Oregon State, and then they have Tulane, and the teams that they play really aren't a challenge for them. Once they get to the Big Ten schedule, they need to be challenged before they get there. They haven't been challenged this year. They got challenged a little bit by TCU, but that's a young football team. And I think for Urban Meyer going to Happy Valley, they got lucky at home last year in the shoe and won by 1 point, 39-38. And not only that, Coach, if you go back 2 years ago, the last time they played in Happy Valley, they lost 24-21. So it's a tough place to play. The whiteout's going to be there. It's going to be a big challenge for Ohio State in this game.
I'm going to do this show, Mark, till you say something positive about Ohio State and Notre Dame. Until then, you never say it. Let me tell you this. Hey, their games aren't competitive because Oregon State's not good enough. That's not Ohio State's fault. That's Oregon State. They're a Power 5 football team. I think Ohio State is an excellent football team, but I'm also very impressed with Penn State. When you look at it, Mark, you're right. They lost there 24-21 2 years ago when the Penn State blocked a field goal, which turned the game around in the fourth quarter. Last year, Ohio State beat them badly, 38-37, I think. They beat them by 1 point. So this game is always going to be very, very close. You have 2 excellent coaches. You have 2 excellent teams. You have 2 teams with great tradition and pride. It'll be a wonderful game.
One of the things that I think kind of an attaboy heads up to Tulane, which is going into the horseshoe, and you know what? They didn't turn the ball over one time. You know, hats off to you, Tulane. And we're going to see how things go.
6 points.
Because Ohio State is 1-1 the last 2 times at Happy Valley. Now, our next game, you know, we were going through, and we said Notre Dame at Wake Forest. And saw the picks. Mark, you had Wake Forest winning 27-24. Coach, you had Notre Dame winning 34-15. And the final score was Notre Dame 56-27. We were thinking about that, and then I got a call from the CrowdSign head office. They got a letter in the mail, and it came. And Mark, I hope you don't mind. The letter was open. It was addressed to you, but we're going to read it if you don't mind.
Sure.
Okay. So we got a letter to you, and it says, "Dear Mark, I know we haven't always seen eye to eye. I've admired your career from your days at Pitt to watching you win 2 Super Bowls. But I really want to thank you for your professional advice. You said Notre Dame can't win if we can't throw it in the ocean even from the shore. And you said we probably wouldn't be able to win if most of our passes were thrown to the other team. Well, Mark, thank you for the advice. We have made some major changes in our offensive personnel, and it's working out so far. You can take some of the credit. Your friend, Brian." So
he's very welcome.
That,
Brian's very welcome. He should have made the change long ago at the quarterback position. I've talked every single week about Brandon Wimbush, and you know that, Kevin. And I said last week they should probably make the change to Ian Book. And then Coach got on board and said, well, he played well last year in the bowl game. He beat LSU. Maybe it's a chance, but no, we're going to go with Brandon Wimbush. I said they should make the change, and they did in this game. And they went down and they just bullied Wake Forest. They were bigger. They were stronger. They were better. I thought Wake Forest would challenge them a little bit after watching Wake Forest play Boston College on a Thursday night a couple weeks ago. They didn't. They just folded under the heat and the pressure. And just look at the size of the Notre Dame players compared to the Wake Forest players on the field to play. It wasn't even close. It was almost embarrassing.
Well, what I've been trying to tell you all year, Mark, how Notre Dame beat Michigan with our second team. That's how good we are, and that's how confident we can play most teams with our second team. But then when we get challenged, we go with our first team. And he has my locker, I won't tell you that. But it was a great performance by him. I mean, 4 touchdowns, ran for another one, and that was a true Notre Dame team. You know, after the Ball State game, Mark, we talked about it. I said the difference is last year's Notre Dame team could run the ball. This year's team was 107th in rushing. The last 2 games, they have really dominated the game with their offensive line as well as their defensive line. So Notre Dame is looking better and better. When we get to who's going to be in the Final Four, I think I'm looking like a genius. And that's amazing because I never looked like one as a coach.
Hey, you know what? You should be guilty today. You should feel bad inside. There should be a little cringe in your stomach inside because the way that you and Brian Kelly ran up the score, Wake Forest, Dave Clawson, their head coach, fired their defensive coordinator after the game because you guys poured on the score. You should be ashamed of yourself.
Hey, Mark, let me acquaint you with one fact of life. It's Wake Forest's job to hold the score down. It's not Notre Dame. You don't like the score, recruit better, coach better.
Well, there you have it. That was our college football contest for Week 5. And I want to take us to our Rapid 5. In our Rapid 5, we picked 5 games. Number 7, TCU at Texas and Austin. Both of you picked TCU. That's a push. Number 14, Mississippi State went to Commonwealth Stadium in Lexington. Once again, both of y'all picked against Kentucky. That's a push as well. Arizona State, number 10, Washington. Coach, you want the spread. Number 18, Wisconsin, Iowa. Coach, you also want the spread. And Louisiana Tech at number 6 LSU. Mark, you on that one straight up. But let's go to number 7.
What, bad call, 24-21 in the fourth quarter. My son Steve's moving and get a bad call back.
Well, let's first things first. Number 17, TCU at Texas. Final, Texas, 31-16. And that's back-to-back weeks that Texas has beat ranked teams, because if you remember, USC had creeped up into the bottom of the rankings to number 25 the week prior, and they beat them. This is the 89th meeting we talked about, but Tom Herman and his Longhorns are coming of age. You tell me. TCU rushed for 141 yards against Texas. They rushed for over 200 against Ohio State. What's that say? I don't know. But the big key is Texas is slowly chipping away and having some big wins. Mark, your thoughts?
Yeah, they are getting better during the season. They just don't need to schedule Maryland on their schedule ever again because they lost to them 2 years in a row coming out of the gate. But I think the key in this is Sean Robinson, the quarterback, did not have a good game, turned the ball over 3 times himself. TCU had 4 turnovers in the game. I think enough said about that. If they don't turn the ball over, they're in this football game. That was one of the sloppiest performances I've seen out of a Gary Patterson team in a long time. But they're going to get it together and be a pretty good football team. But I am impressed with what Texas has done over the last 2 weeks.
During my coaching career, the one thing I learned from Woody Hayes is your team can't be up 12 times a year. You better take 3 or 4 games and peak your team for those. One thing was obvious, TCU, hoping that they could be in the championship playoff, peaked for Ohio State. And they played awfully well against Ohio State. They were quick, they were alert, they were focused. However, against Texas, it was a different story. Let's not take anything away from Texas. That's a great win. They're coming on. They manhandled USC the week before. We'll see what happens when they play Oklahoma in a couple weeks. But by the same token, it's still a good TCU team when they show up at the proper time.
Well, as you said, when they show up, and Texas is showing up. So we're going to see where that goes because we're going to hear more about them as we look the next couple weeks, especially the Red River rivalry, Red River shootout. But Texas is on a roll. Number 14, Mississippi State went into Commonwealth Stadium to play the Kentucky Wildcats, the 1-0 Kentucky Wildcats. As we talked about, Kylin Hill and Nick Fitzgerald were going to run and we're going to throw, and they ran for 56 yards. So we know about Benny Stell from Kentucky. We've heard about that. But Kentucky's got a defense. They won that game 28-7. And it's the first time in a long time since Kentucky was 2-0 in the SEC, 1977, to be a matter of fact. So, Mark, talk to us about Mississippi State going into Commonwealth, losing to the Cats.
Look, Mark Stoops has got this team rolling right now, and you talked about their defense. They held Mississippi State to 255 yards less than their average coming into this game. You said the 56 yards. But I think the key is I'm on the Benny Snell bandwagon now. They got another big day, over 150 yards rushing, 165 with 4 touchdowns. I'm on the bandwagon now. He can get it done. He's one of the top backs in the SEC, the way that he runs the football, power, speed, and finesse. And now he's the touchdown leader for Kentucky all time because of what he was able to do in this game. But the way this team plays on both sides of the ball, when you can run the ball and you can stop the run and you don't turn it over, you're going to be in just about every football game you play, Coach.
I agree with you completely, Mark. That was very, very well said, very astute. You cannot win the game when you only rush for 56 yards when you are a team like Mississippi State, particularly, which has such a great quarterback in Fitzgerald who can run and throw. But it was just a real dominating effort by Kentucky. I congratulate them. It's nice to see Kentucky back.
Well, Coach, you said after Kentucky beat Florida, it was the first time you saw a real physical team. And I think that's what you have to win in the SEC, and that's what Mark Stoops is bringing. Our third game, Arizona State at Washington. A wise old coach once said that a team needs to learn to compete before they can learn to win. And I think we would all agree, Arizona State, they are learning to compete. They haven't learned to consistently win consistently just yet, but they are learning to compete because they played tough game, 27-20. They lost to number 10 Washington, who has been playing steady football since their opening loss to Auburn. Mark, talk to us about that.
Well, it was the Washington defense, particularly their pass defense, and I've talked about this the last couple of weeks. Not only their defense is one of the tops in the nation, but their defensive secondary was the best in the Pac-12 the last year and this year, and one of the best in the nation combined. And what they did, they were able to hold the offense of ASU to 104 yards passing in this game. Now, if you look at Arizona State, they've got some great wide receivers, Keneal Harry and a bunch of other guys that are on the outside, the perimeter guys that can make plays. In this game, they just couldn't get the ball downfield and get it done. They wanted to run the ball more in this game. They were successful about running the football, but not in the passing game. And the defense of Washington stood up in this game and really won this game for the Huskies.
I agree with you. Washington has an outstanding defense. Offensively, they're not near as explosive, Mark, as they were last year. It's amazing how one guy can make a difference. Last year, they had a wide receiver named PENN. He's now with San Francisco 49ers. I mean, he was explosive. Punt returns, deep balls, catch a 5-yard hitch and turn it into a 50-yard gain. They don't have that explosiveness on offense. The other thing, I think Coach Peterson's one of the great coaches in the country. When he was at Boise State, he always had his team so well prepared, and they always came up with different gimmick plays and gadget plays. They kept you on your toes. He's not doing that at Washington right now. But their team is very, very solid on defense as long as they don't turn the ball over. And I think Jake Browning, the quarterback, is a 4-year starter now. Yep. He's not a great quarterback, but he is a winning quarterback.
Well, speaking of that experience, Coach, I'd like to see how this game would turn out if maybe this game was played in Week 10. If by that point the Arizona State Sun Devils have learned to win, not just learn to compete. But number 18, Wisconsin, at Iowa. We talked about a tough place to play. It's for a big old trophy with a pig on it. And these teams are two pretty evenly matched. Same type of football. And this was a tough one, 28-17. And the angry honey badger went in there. But you know what? Iowa stood their own. And it was pretty much some traditional Big Ten football if you want to look at it that way. Mark, talk to us.
Going through 3 quarters, this game went exactly how I thought it would. It'd be a hard-fought football game on both sides of it. You're going to have to earn and grind out every yard and every point. It was 17-14 at the end of 3 quarters. But in the 4th quarter, Wisconsin came on. Alex Hornibrook, the quarterback, did a terrific job, not turning the ball over, throwing for 3 touchdowns. And Wisconsin outscored them 14-0 in the 4th quarter. That was the telling tale of the football game. They were able to wear Iowa down in the 4th quarter.
Actually, they outscored Iowa like 14-0 in the last 2 minutes of the game. They're down 17-14 when Hornibrook makes a great throw, great catch. They get a turnover right after that, which was a meaningless touchdown. I'm still a little disappointed in Wisconsin for having as many starters back on offense. Their offensive line's not performing as well. They don't get the running space that they had last year. Defensively, they're still a very, very good football team. But I just thought that they would be an explosive football team. But they had speed at wide receiver. They had a defensive back, and they're not showing that this year, Mark. So I'm a little disappointed in Wisconsin. It was a mistake putting them in my Final 4.
Wow. Wow. Make sure that one's racked.
I would tell you, Sherlock Holmes didn't need to come up with that because it's obvious that was a mistake.
Well, we'll see if we can get some explosiveness out of either team as they both have a bye this week. Well, our last game in our Rapid 5 was Louisiana Tech Bulldogs went down to LSU, and there was a family affair. And coaches, you said it wasn't going to be an upset. If somebody had been upset in your house if you didn't pick them, but this was almost an upset. Mark, what did you think about this game?
It was ground and pound for LSU. They had two backs that were close to, one was over 100 yards, the other one was close to it. Nick Brossette again scored a couple of touchdowns. But I thought the key is Joe Burrow is such a game manager. He hasn't thrown an interception in the entire season. Not flashy numbers, completes less than 50% of his passes, but what he does, if the play is not there, he'll kill the play. He'll throw the ball away if it's not there. He's not worried about stats. He's not worried about gaudy numbers. He's worried about winning football games and managing his position. And thus far this year, he's done an excellent job at doing it.
I was impressed with LSU. I agree with you, but let me look at Louisiana Tech. They outgained LSU for the course of the game. I thought the offensive line for Louisiana Tech played well. They protected Smith. I thought the quarterback played very well. I didn't think the receivers showed up the first quarter and a half of the game. They dropped passes. They fumbled the ball, which turned into a scoop and run for a touchdown, etc. But I did feel on defense that they presented the problems to LSU. They never got a sack. They never came up 2nd and 9. It was always 2nd and 5, 3rd and 1, things along this nature. But it was a good performance by Louisiana Tech. They wanted to come away with a win. They didn't. A loss is a loss. We're still wearing black armbands in the Holtz household.
Louisiana Tech showed up, but Coach, they're going to really need it because we've seen who they play next. The Green Machine in North Texas is undefeated. And
this is a team, Kevin, that beat Arkansas like 44-10. That's the North team that he plays, favored in their conference. It'll be a great game. Unfortunately, once again, he has to go on the road.
And LSU hosts Ole Miss. So that concludes our review of the college football contest and the rapid fire for week 4. So let's go back very quickly because we don't have any big changes unless you want to substitute. But Mark, your national championship picks: Alabama, Clemson, Oklahoma, Washington. Coach, Georgia, Clemson, Notre Dame, Ohio State. Any difference, any changes? You gentlemen going to sit tight?
No, I'm going to sit tight. Last week I said I wasn't sure whether it was Oklahoma or Ohio State, but after seeing Oklahoma beating Army in overtime, I definitely am going with Ohio State. But next week it may be Penn State in there. Let's just make sure you put it in pencil and not in ink yet. The other three are pretty solid.
I'm holding tight with mine. A wise coach once said it's very tough to get your team up for 12 games every week during the season. I wonder who said that a little while ago.
I have no idea.
And
I just say what my wife tells me to say, Mark.
We'll add 2 more with conference. But that concludes our review, and that includes review of the national championship picks. So let's talk about this coming week. Week 5. Like I said, we are a quarter away through the season. Coach said last week, this is the week where we start to determine, who's good, who's bad. Is Florida State really good or really bad, or is Virginia Tech really good or really bad? But what we're going to see right now is conference play kicks off. Every team except one that we have here is ranked. And our college football show for week number 5 is going to be the number 12 West Virginia Mountaineers at number 25 Texas Tech, 3-1. Syracuse 4-0 at number 3 Clemson, 4-0. Number 4 Ohio State going into number 9 Penn State in Happy Valley. Night game Saturday night. And number 7 Stanford, 4-0. It's going at number 8 Notre Dame, who's also undefeated. So all these games are leading up to what I think is going to be a great week. So let's talk number 1 in the Big 12. We talk about air show, defense optional, but both of them have some defense right now. West Virginia's 3-0 is taking on number 25 Texas Tech, who's 3-1 in Lubbock. This is the 10th meeting between these two. Goes back to 1938 Sun Bowl, but as you know, they've been conference mates, so they've played 7 years in a row. But West Virginia leads us 7-2 right now. In some ways, you could almost call this the Kevin Sumlin Bowl or the maybe Hal Mummy's Grandkids Bowl, because if you look at Dana Holgerson, the head coach at West Virginia, Cliff Kingsbury, the head coach at Texas Tech, they have all worked for Kevin Sumlin. They've worked for each other. I mean, it's this air raid, family that is now represented heavily in Lubbock and in Morgantown. So Will Greer is a quarterback at West Virginia. We've all heard about Will Greer. What a lot of people don't know is he's the older brother of the internet sensations Nash and Hayes Greer, who, oh, by the way, are a lot more popular than their Heisman candidate brother. But this game is going to be all about throwing the ball. Mark, lead us off and talk to us about West Virginia at Texas Tech.
Well, both of these teams are in the top 3 in passing in the nation, leading the nation in passing. And you know it's going to be a high-scoring game because of the prolific offenses that both teams have. But I think the key in this football game is who's going to get a defensive stop. Now, is it going to be Texas Tech or is it going to be West Virginia? West Virginia's defensive coordinator, Tony Gibson, has gotten better and better each year with this defense. They're 18th in total defense. But here's the key. In their 3 games this year, they've given up a total of 17 points. Now, they're going to be challenged more by Texas Tech in this game, but even though the game's down in Lubbock, I'm picking West Virginia because they're going to get a couple of defensive stops and some crucial ones in this game. It'll still be a high-scoring affair, but West Virginia 49, Texas Tech 42.
Well, I think you're pretty close, Mark. Both these teams employ the offense, but I think you have to go back to Mike Leach, quarterback or the coach at Washington State. He's the one that really divides all this, and they're the disciples from there. But I love the 2 receivers. Everybody talked about Will Greer, but there's a receiver named Seals who last year caught 18 touchdown passes and last week caught 3 touchdown passes. The longest was 1 yard. They get on the 1 yard. He run the slant or the fade. And dish that, they had a receiver last year named Jennings who's back again, who had over 1,000 yards in offense. So I think that West Virginia is very, very good on offense. But I want to tell you something. This is a very, very dangerous Texas Tech football team. I think West Virginia will win the game. I pick it 42-41. And what's really amazing about Texas Tech, Mark and Kevin, they lost their quarterback, they lost their top receivers, and yet they throw the ball around and put all kinds of points on the board. But West Virginia in a close one, much closer than people think.
Well, freshman Alan Bowman is slinging that ball everywhere. And, Coach, you've played quite a few times, correct me if I'm wrong, in Arkansas. You played at Lubbock. That's an interesting place to play because if you look it up, it's 1,400 miles from Morgantown, West Virginia, and that's a conference game. So it's a 11 o'clock Eastern time kickoff. We'll see how that air show will turn out. Next game, Syracuse at Clemson. Call it what you want. Call it the Revenge Bowl. Last year, Clemson goes up to the Carrier Dome. Syracuse takes it to them 27-24. Kelly Bryant was the starting quarterback then. They're coming down to Clemson to Death Valley, and Kelly Bryant's not the starting quarterback anymore. Trevor Lawrence, the Fabio Hare, the gunslinging arm, the kid from Cartersville, Georgia, freshman, is taking over, and Syracuse is probably going to face a little bit different team than they did last year, but Eric Dungy and his Orangemen are on a roll. They're 4-0 as well. They're undefeated overall. They're undefeated in the ACC, and they can play some football. Mark, I think it's a great game. What do you think?
I think it's going to be a blowout, to tell you the truth. I think if you look at Clemson right now, they want some payback from last year. They knocked Kelly Bryant out of the game. This is a football game that's not being played in the Dome, where Syracuse is most comfortable, where they have a definite advantage in the Carrier Dome. I think playing at Clemson at Death Valley is a tough place to play at. And not only that, with Trevor Lawrence, he's not afraid of the bright lights, Coach. We saw that in the game against Texas A&M. The first time he went into the football game, the first pass he completed was a long touchdown pass. He's completed 65% of his passes this season for 9 touchdowns and 2 picks. But more importantly, they spread the wealth on this football team. Offensively, they have 12 players on this team with 9 receptions or more. That's what I call getting it done in the passing game. And the reason why he's in there, because now they have a vertical threat in the passing game. They can go deep with the football. I got Clemson winning 34-14.
He was the number 1 or number 2 quarterback prospect in the country last year. He came in early, and now he's starting as a true freshman. The thing I always look at and say, okay, you have a quarterback last year, Kelly Bryant, who led your team to a 10-2 season, ACC conference champion, and then he comes back and now he's beaten out by a true freshman. What does that do to the chemistry of the football team? I think that's the same thing we're going to find out at Notre Dame, replacing the quarterback there. I do believe that Clemson will win the football game, but Mark, if you just want to look at statistics, you would say this is the right time for an upset, because Syracuse, number 19th in the country on third down defense. They're giving up something like 29% on third down conversion. But I just have a great deal of respect for Brett Venables, the defensive coordinator, and I think that Clemson will find a way to win at home. The other thing, the 2 worst visiting team locker room, Southern Cal and Clemson. There's nowhere you can talk to your team. It's all bunched up. You got to take them outside. It is incredibly poor, and that's why I hated to go to Clemson. Southern Cal, the guy that used to be at the Oakland Raiders, Davis, he built it that way so you couldn't have any word to talk to the team. Do not underestimate the adjustment at halftime.
I've been in that locker room in the Coliseum. You're right. The visiting locker room stinks.
Well, every advantage it takes. Our number 3 game for the College Football Show contest. Number 4, Ohio State, 4-0, going at number 9, Penn State, 4-0. And this is Happy Valley. And we all know, white out, 100,000+ people. This is the 33rd meeting between these two since 1912. Ohio State has an 18-14 advantage, and Ohio State has won 5 of the last 6. And you have the number 1 scoring offense and the number 2 scoring offense playing together. Now, they haven't played very many great defenses, but still, Dwayne Haskins is throwing the ball all over the place. Penn State quarterback Trace McSorley might be a little bit more balanced. So we're going to see how this goes, because Nick Bosa is still out from that surgery, and there is a home field advantage because the last 2 games that Ohio State has played at Happy Valley are 1-1, and the win was in overtime. Mark.
No Nick Bosa. Boom. Down goes Ohio State. The best defensive player in the country is out. Guess what? Trace McSorley and Mike Sanders, you rushed for 200 yards last week. The running back for Penn State. They're one of the better rushing teams in the country. Not only that, Trace McSorley can run the football, not just throw the football. He's a great decision maker. He's been in the system for a long time. He knows exactly what to do. He's not going to feel pressure. They're going in this game guns a-blazing. Everything's going to be out. James Franklin, the head coach, he knows how to beat Ohio State because he's done it right in Happy Valley. They're going to do it again. It's still going to be a pretty close game, 37-33, but I got the Nittany Lions, and I'm a Pitt Panther saying the Nittany Lions are going to win and beat Ohio State.
You don't make much sense, but let me that as bad. I got to tell you, I picked Clemson 34-24. I forgot to give you the score. Mark, once again, as I say, I'd love to agree with you, but we'll both be wrong. This is the next Ohio State football team. You talked about the great offense of Penn State. Let me tell you something, Mark. At Illinois, going into the fourth quarter, was a 1-touchdown difference. They put all those points on the board late in the game. Don't tell me how many yards Penn State rushed for. Kent State rushed for close to 300 yards against Illinois in the opening ball game, and that's my alma mater, and we aren't noted for running except running away from the opposition. However, I do like Ohio State. I think Haskins is outstanding. I love Dobbins, the running back, Weber, the running back, and I just believe that Ohio State's defense has not played as well as it can, as well as it should. And I love McSorley. He's good, but he doesn't have the great receivers he once had, Mark. And not only that, they do miss the great running back they had last year, who's now playing in the NFL, whereas Ohio State's back are both returning. Ohio State wins this football game 38-31, although I don't think it will be that close, Mark.
These games are both at 7:30 on TV, different channels. What I'm saying about both games, I'm talking about our next game. And that's number 7 Stanford is going to number 8 Notre Dame in South Bend. So you can watch Ohio State, Penn State, Notre Dame, Stanford, flip back and forth. But this one's exciting. And here's why. Because last week, Stanford, let's call it a little luck of the Irish, bounce of the ball. How'd that work in their favor? Take Notre Dame. Notre Dame took Mark May's advice, and look what happened. They're a whole new offense. Now, at the same time, what about defense? Stanford, Bryce Love, arguably still one of the top running backs in the entire country. He's running for Stanford. Notre Dame has given up 200+ yards. But it is at home. It's Ian Book's first big start at home in Notre Dame against Stanford, primetime TV. This is a big, big game. Mark, please take us here.
Yeah, she said number 7 Stanford playing against number 8 Notre Dame. Starting with that premise right there, they're getting more respect than the Irish right now, Coach. You want to know why? They played tougher opponents. They played on the road. They went to Oregon, to Autzen Stadium, a tough place to play last week. Yes, you can call it luck, but no, I call it determination. I call it hard work. I call it great coaching and not making decisions. Bunch of smart kids at Stanford, they don't make mistakes. Stanford's going to win this game, and Bryce Love's going to be at his best in this game. He's going to rush for over 150 yards. I guarantee you that, Coach. Write it down on the notes right there, 150+ yards. KJ Costello's going to get at least 3 touchdowns in this game. It's going to be close, but down at the wire, guess what? Because of the resilience of Stanford and what they learned last week on the road, they're going to pull it out in the fourth quarter and win this game 29-23.
You sound like a comedian out of work, Mark. Let's look at the facts. Let's not go to the wish list. Number one, Stanford's 109th in the country in rushing. Notre Dame has a great rushing defense. Not only that, Notre Dame's very good on pass efficiency defense. Stanford has some problems. Yeah, their front's good. Notre Dame will be able to run the football because I think their offensive line's excellent. But let's remember this. Dylan Mitchell last week caught 14 passes for 239 yards against that Stanford defense. The thing that's so impressed about Ian Book, number one, he's exceptionally accurate. Number two, he makes good choices. Number three, he's been in the program for 3 years, so he understands the offense completely. He's a very confident young man. And what's more important, he was a great backup to the starting quarterback, Wimbish. He was a great backup. Wimbish will have to be the same type of attitude and personality and be ready to play. But Ian Book is for real. Notre Dame wins this game 31-17, although I don't think it'll be that close. Notre Dame has a great punter and a great place kicker, Mark. Notre Dame, how can you vote? How can you pick against the national champion to be?
Tell me how Notre Dame defends this. One thing about Ian Book, what he did in that game, he threw the short pass as well, and Wake Forest missed a lot of tackles. Short pass, long run. That won't happen against Stanford. What's that Notre Dame defense going to do with those big tight ends, 6'5" and 6'7", and those big wide receivers, 6'2", 6'3", and 6'3", when they use their big body in the red zone and catch touchdown passes and block out those small Notre Dame defensive backs?
I'll tell you what they're going to do. When they run the ball, they're going to knock them on their back and tackle the ball carrier. When they run the pass, they're going to intercept it. Trust me. And I'll tell you what, Mark, our normal bet.
Yep, let's double it.
Oh, okay. Okay. You still have a chance to get even if we have 8 more games. Go ahead, Kevin.
Well, that's 7:30 Saturday night. Gentlemen, I'm excited to see those texts coming through. So that completes our Week 5 College Football Show contest, which is going to lead us into our Rapid 5. And our Rapid 5 is South Carolina at number 17, Kentucky. Number 19, Oregon at number 24, Cal. Virginia Tech is playing at number 22, Duke. BYU, number 20, is going to Washington. And Army at Buffalo. So I want to kick this off with South Carolina is heading in to Commonwealth Stadium to play the University of Kentucky Wildcats. 2-0 in the SEC for the first time since 1977. Think about that. Coach, I think you were at NC State or Arkansas or the Jets. Mark, you were at Pitt, and I was in second grade or something like that. But it has been a long time. We know about Benny Snell. We talk about the rushing yards. Think about the defense. You got Josh Allen for Kentucky, outside linebacker. They've got a middle linebacker named Cash Daniel from Paintsville, Kentucky, and he's like a mix between next of kin and the boss. I mean, they are tough, physical football team, and South Carolina's going to come in. Gus Malzahn, he's got SEC players too. We're going to see how this goes. But things have not been this exciting in Lexington in a long, long time. Mark, talk to us about this game.
Well, I think South Carolina and Will Muschamp's are still licking their wounds from taking that Georgia whooping. In this game, hey, I'm a believer now until I can disbelieve about Kentucky. With Benny Snell and Terry Wilson running the football, he's not a great passer, Terry Wilson, but he can run the football and move the chains. That's going to put a lot of pressure on South Carolina's defense. They're going to grind this game out. It's going to be closer than most people think. I still have Kentucky winning it 30-26. Until they prove me wrong, I'm on the Benny Snell bandwagon.
I like Jake Bentley, the quarterback at South Carolina. I think Debo Sanders, one of the best wide receivers in the entire country. I think South Carolina's a very physical football team. I think Muschamp's an excellent defensive coach. I look for South Carolina to win the football game, and I think they're going to win it 24-21. And Kevin, let me tell you something. My first year at South Carolina, we go 0-11, and we got ready to play Kentucky the second year, and they wrote an article in the Kentucky newspaper that said South Carolina should not be in the conference. We weren't competitive enough. We should be thrown out of the conference. We never lost to Kentucky again. I got that article out every single week, and I think Kentucky's maybe beaten South Carolina one time in the last 20 years since then. South Carolina, 24-21.
Well, it's a great pick, Coach. Kentucky's won the last 4 in a row, I think. But it might be just basketball, as we know. Let's talk about number 19, Oregon. Is going to number 24, Cal. So Oregon is licking their wounds. We just talked about that. And those are, dropping the ball. How's that happen? Is there a mistrust with the coaches and the team? But don't forget Cal. No one's talking about them. Cal's undefeated. They are one of 3 undefeated teams in the Pac-12 North. They can throw it. They can play some defense. And they're also big-time Pac-12 Division I football players. So is Oregon, going to go in, kind of make a statement, or are they going to keep thinking about letting Stanford beat them twice? Mark.
I look at Oregon in this game to make a rebound. I think when you look at Mario Cristobal, the head coach of Oregon, they're going to learn from their mistakes last year. The players are going to rally around and circle the wagons and win this game. California's a bit of an anomaly. They're kind of unknown. They play great defense this year, and they're undefeated. You're right. And one of their biggest wins, they beat BYU. That's BYU's only loss, and we know BYU what they did to Wisconsin on the road. So this is a game that's going to be challenging. It's going to be a little high scoring, more than people think. I think Oregon wins this game 44-31. The big fella, Justin Herbert's going to throw for 3 or 4 touchdowns in this game. He's going to have a big game throwing the ball vertically against the California defense.
This is a different Cal team in the past. They'll always have wide open offense, throw the ball. Then Justin Wilcox comes in. He was the defense coordinator of Wisconsin. He comes in and he plays Wisconsin-style football. They're great on defense. They're outstanding on third down. They take the ball away from you. They play great goal line defense. But I have to go with Oregon. I'll tell you something. This is a very, very good football team. Justin Herbert, the quarterback for Oregon, last year when he played, they won 6 wins, 1 loss, averaged 52 points a game. Then he got injured. When he did play, they won 1 game, lost 4, averaged 15 points a game. Last time I read, Justin Herbert's going to play in the football game. I look for Oregon to win 34-21.
We'll get that rebound in the Pac-12. Our third game, a wounded Hokie, Virginia Tech, is heading to Durham to play Duke at 7 o'clock. On a Saturday night, and as we know, they went to Norfolk, 20,000 people in the stadium. Well, it's not basketball season in Durham yet, so guess what? There's going to be more than 20,000 people in the stadium for the football game. But it's a 26 meeting between these two going back to 1937. Virginia Tech has a 16-8 advantage. This is unbeaten conference play. Both of them are unbeaten. Can they get the Monarch off their back from the week prior for Virginia Tech, and can David Cutcliffe and his Blue Devils keep steamrolling, keep going, and winning? Mark.
I like the Blue Devils in this game, not just because my daughter's a Blue Devil because she goes to Duke Law School, and she told me you don't just stroll into Wallace Wade Stadium and expect to get a win. You're going to have to earn it. But remember this name, Cyrus Habibi Lyko. You want to know why? He's a touchdown machine. He has 7 runs and 5 touchdowns this season for Duke. He can get it done on the ground. And not only that, David Cutcliffe's done a terrific job. He doesn't have the facilities that most of the people in the conference have. He doesn't have the big stadium, and he doesn't need that. He just needs smart, good, tough players that don't make mistakes. They're down to their second quarterback. They're still winning games, not turning the ball over, playing smart football and tough special teams. I like Duke to win this game, upsetting Virginia Tech 38-28, Coach.
I don't think this would be an upset, Mark, not with the quarterback, Josh Jackson, being out for Virginia Tech. But the amazing thing, both teams have backup quarterbacks. Yep. Jones was starting quarterback for Duke. He was outstanding. And the backup's done very, very well. Now it's going to be up to Ryan Willis, a quarterback at Virginia Tech. I just can't believe that Bud Foster, as great a defensive coach as he is Fuente's the outstanding head coach and did such a great job at Memphis, came into Virginia Tech, had a nice year last year. I just can't believe that they aren't going to bounce back. There's too much pride on defense. To look and gave up 630 yards last week to Old Dominion, a team that was 0-3. I just don't believe that they are going to let that happen. I think they're going to come out with their hair on fire. I think they're going to find a way to win. I look for Virginia Tech 41-35.
Well, here we are. Conference play, new season. Number 20, BYU 3-1 at Washington, who's also number 11, Washington, who's also 3-1. The history, for some reason, it's only the 10th meeting. I thought they would have met more, but we know BYU took down at the time number 6 Wisconsin in week 2, but as Coach, you said, we didn't know who was who back then. Take BYU, Tanner Magnum. They got a 25-year-old quarterback. Squally Canada. He ran for 118 against a Big Ten defense. These, I want to say young men, these mature football players at BYU can play, but so can Washington. As we've seen, steady football since their opening season loss to Auburn. Mark, talk to us about this big game.
We'll just say BYU has some grown men on the roster, Kevin. And Washington has some young pups. But at least Washington has a 4-year starter and quarterback, Jake Browning, and he's been around. He's been in some big games. He knows how to win big games. He knows how to play well at home or on the road. It doesn't matter. He'll always travel well and play well. Myles Gaskin's finally getting it back, coming back to the Myles Gaskin we thought he was going to be at the running back position. But I'm more impressed the way their defensive secondary, and I mentioned this before against Arizona State, shut down their passing game of Manny Wilkins and their wide receivers. They will do the same thing to Brigham Young because their defense is just stout. They'll give up a couple of plays, but they won't give up a lot of big plays, and they'll shut this offense down, and it'll be closer than most people think going into the fourth quarter, but Washington will pull away in the end 40-28.
I look at this game and you look at the stats. You have to be impressed with what BYU did, particularly against Wisconsin, at Wisconsin. They're big, they're strong, they're physical on defense. They don't seem to have the great speed, but boy, they play smart, and they're playing very, very solid football and being able to run the ball on offense. But when I look at this game, Mark, I say, if I'm coaching, I'd rather play BYU than to play Washington. That's why I'm going to pick Washington to win the game 27-10.
27-10, but don't forget Chris Peterson knows quite a bit about BYU and that culture and how they play, how they recruit, and they have a lot of the same recruiting base as you know. Look at the teams, look at the rosters. This will be an exciting game. But almost as exciting is our next game. Army 2-2 is at 4-0 Buffalo. Army 2-2. Who are the two teams they've lost to? Undefeated Duke and undefeated Oklahoma last week. And oh, by the way, that was in overtime. This game is Saturday at noon in Buffalo. We talked about Army rushing 400 yards a game. Kelvin Hopkins Jr. Beat Hawaii, barely lost to Oklahoma. It's been a great season for Army, but Buffalo has done something else. We can see that they've beaten Temple. They've beat Eastern Michigan. They beat Rutgers. Well, you know what? Those are some 85 scholarship football teams, but they've beaten them well. Tyree Jackson, their quarterback, is big as some of the Marks Fella offensive linemen from the Redskins. This is going to be an exciting game. Tell us about Army at Buffalo, Mark.
Well, you mentioned Tyree Jackson. He is a big fellow, but he's thrown for 15 touchdowns and just 3 interceptions on the season. What does Army have left in the tank after that close game, the overtime game against Oklahoma? If they've got something left in the tank, they can run the ball against Buffalo to try to play keep away against this team. Well, I think Buffalo with Tyree Jackson at the quarterback position, he's going to make plays vertically down the field to play. This game's going to be a close game. I think Army will take the lead in this game, but I think Buffalo will battle back at the game. And this game is an all upstate New York football game. I'm from upstate New York, but I think Buffalo will pull this game out just because of their quarterback play. It'll be close, but it'll be 28-21, Coach.
Well, it's just a great environment for Buffalo. They have a chance. The stadium's probably going to be sold out, filled up. They have a chance to really bring the fans in. And after this game, they now get a chance to go into the conference, and they might be the best team in the Eastern Division of the Mid-American Conference. However, I'm going to go with Army. Army's number one in the country, Mark, in time of possession. They can control the football. They're not very impressive. You look at them and say, how do they play good defense? How are they going to stop the great passing attack? Well, let's remember this. They did beat Hawaii, can throw the football. They did play Oklahoma, held them to 21 points going into overtime. They have a way to get things done because they protect the football. And I think that Army wins the game 27-24, and it's good for the country. And I don't know how you can pull against a military academy, Mark.
I'm not pulling against the military academy. I never would. You know how patriotic I am. You know how I feel about our academies. Those guys are great. Those young men and women are terrific, and I'd do anything for them.
And I tell you, ever been to West Point, ladies and gentlemen? Go there. And just the environment is unbelievable.
And go there in the fall because it's beautiful in the fall.
Yes, the winter not so much.
It's going to be an exciting game. So we talk about our college football show contest. We've done a rapid five, and that leads us to the winners from week 4. So we've got three winners: one for the college football show contest, one for the rapid five contest. So Coach Holtz, why don't you lead us off with our winners from the college football show contest from week 4?
I'm excited to announce that the winner is Ben Blacklock. That's a real tongue. $250 Amazon gift card. Congratulations. Number 2, Alan Reese, REECE, $100 Amazon gift card. Congratulations. And the third one goes to Ernie Matthews. I felt he was going to win $100 Amazon gift card.
I'm going to change mine up, guys. I'm going to go 3-2-1 because I think the grand prize winner should be announced last. Number 3, Stuart Younger, $100 Amazon gift card. Number 2, Doug Goodman, $100 Amazon gift card. And number 1, this week's champion, Cross Chris 007, a $250 Amazon gift card. Congratulations, Cross Chris 007.
Well, the guy with the call sign wins the big prize. Gentlemen, let's talk about the Week 4 Attaboys. Had some great games, big upsets, and that's where a lot of these Attaboys came from. I don't think we have any kickers this week, Coach. But, Mark, I'm going to ask you first. Who are your 2 Attaboys for the Week 4 college football season?
I think somebody changed one of mine, but I think I'm going to go with this anyway. Of course, Blake LaRusse, the quarterback from Old Dominion, 495 yards passing, their 49-35 win over number 13 Virginia Tech. I was going to throw a curveball in there and go by the guy's first name is Ian something, but no, I'm going to go with K.J. Costello of Stanford. 3 touchdown passes in their 38-31 win over Oregon in overtime because you know what? He's going to do the same thing to Notre Dame, Coach.
Oh, Mark, you fouled me up. I won the picky unbooked. He threw for 375 yards, 4 touchdowns, ran for one. They said, no, Mark May's going to pick him. You can't do that. And you don't give the credit to a young man that came off the bench, did a tremendous job. So let me tell you. Mine goes to Travis Fulgham. He's the ODU wide receiver. Former walk-on, 9 receptions, 188 yards, 1 touchdown. But let's also give credit to Jonathan Duhart. He also was an ODU receiver, 9 receptions, 142 yards, 3 touchdowns. Those 2 receivers had 18 catches for over 300 yards. Congratulations. Great win. I ask, why didn't it happen the first 3 games? Keep it going. Congratulations. But I also would like to give it to a lot of different people, but I can't, Mark. I can't believe you didn't give it to Eon Book. Oh, you're hopeless, Mark. We have no hope for you. Hey, I am going to stop praying for your conversion.
Well, gentlemen, I think there may have been confusion because it came to who pays for the locker. So, Ian Book, you know what? We'll send Ian Book an attaboy because he's there because Mark May, was talking about it.
My locker is greatness.
Hey, I would have given it to him, and I wanted to give it to him. He definitely deserves it. But when you're Brian Kelly and you run up the score on poor Wake Forest, and then they fire their defensive coordinator, I figure I just let you have Ian Book.
I tell you, Mark. It's a good thing we aren't in the same studio together, but I love you. I love you despite your inefficiencies.
Love you too, Coach.
All right, so we're done hugging. Okay, gentlemen, I'm joking around. But here's the thing, I'm not joking around. Let's talk about your thoughts for the week. We're going into Week 5 of college football. It's going to be exciting because now we're in conference play. What I want to know is what are you gentlemen really thinking and looking forward to most?
Well, for me, I'm looking for the conference play because now even teams that lost like Virginia Tech to Old Dominion can get back into it because their coaches can tell them, guys, look, we had a bad loss. It's going to be tough for us to get to the playoff, but guess what? We can still get to the conference championship game, still win the conference and go to a great bowl game this season and still be highly ranked. The season really begins right now. For a lot of these teams, it definitely does. For teams like Notre Dame, it began a long time ago. They started in Week 1 against Michigan, Coach.
I think that the thing I'm looking for the next week or two, everybody's going to be divided into 2 types of teams. Those that have a chance to really accomplish something great. I'm referring to Alabama, Georgia, Ohio State, Penn State, etc., and Notre Dame. And you're also going to have a group of people that are saying, we got to find a way to get to 6 wins. We got to get to a bowl game. Some are looking for a championship, and now we're going to have people who are going to start looking, how do I get to a bowl game? Then the last third of the season, they break down into 2 teams. Those that have a chance to achieve something great, and those whose only salvation relies in ruining somebody else's hopes and dreams and ambition to get to a bowl. So after this next week, we're going to have who's trying to get to a bowl.
Well, we'll start separating that out. What I'm looking forward to this week is seeing people that understand college football and they understand doing college football right. And I'm going to give you an example. If you watch Army took Oklahoma in Norman to overtime, what happened when Army left the field? They got a standing ovation. People didn't leave. And there were some other teams that when the losing team walked off the field, people were throwing things at them. You know what? That's not what college football is about. You can maybe root against somebody. You can joke around with somebody. But more importantly, what I like is that people understand, and I use Oklahoma fan base for a reason. Those are 18 to 22-year-old young men out there that are giving it their all. You know what? If you're a grown adult and you're worried about, yelling and screaming at an 18 to 22-year-old because of a mistake on a football field, you know what? Maybe you got some issues. But my hat's off to the fans at Norman, Oklahoma, University of Oklahoma, standing ovation for the Army Black Knights if they walked off that field. And that's an example for the rest of college football. So with that said, Week 5, College Football Show with Lou Holtz and Mark May is in the books. Go to thecrowdsline.com, compete in the contest. Download the Crowdsline app. More importantly, very soon, on your way home, wherever you are, listen to the Crowdsline podcast, because we've got a lot of new features with that to include this show and some interviews, and we're going to bring in Coach and Mark. So, Mark, Coach, gentlemen, it's been a pleasure. Have a great, great week. I look forward to hearing from you as we get ready for this Week 5. God bless to you all. Thank you.
From the 30, Johnson out of the shotgun. Dropping back, pressure on, throwing over the middle. Has Williams. 10, 5, touchdown!